I see a lot of videos talking about black and white, saying things like, try this new technique in Lightroom for black and white. And the truth is, they're almost never new. There's a few simple ways to edit black and white with some variables. And today I'm going to show you the 3 primary ways that I edit black and white. So we're going to take one photo. I'm actually going to take this one because it has kind of some extremes. It has foliage, it has backlighting. There's a lot going on here. It doesn't matter whether you're shooting infrared or film or digital. When you're doing black and white, it's all about that nuance of shadow and tone. I prefer to shoot my black and whites in color because then I have all that color information to work with. But even if you're doing monochrome files and then editing the tone and the nuance and the shadow and the atmosphere you create, that's all the same. Today we're going to look at the basic raw edit of black and white and why it's so good. We're going to look at the fine art black and white, and we're going to look at the tinted black and white, and we're going to edit this same photo quickly with all of them. Now, of course, I'm going to be using my tools and presets. A lot of you guys that watch my channel use these, so this will kind of help you out in terms of which one do I want to use and why. But it's important to understand that what I'm showing you today, you can do with your own workflows and your own processes as well. I'm just going to start with the raw edit. This can be in Lightroom, it can be in Capture One, it can be another app. Whatever you do, you want to have presets. And they don't have to be mine, but you want to be able to go through and look at how different and how radically you can alter the intensity of shadow, of softness in a portrait. Let's just do something like the perfect portrait here. Now, we have a lot of backlight. I could go and I could use a mask. I could build a mask. I could go to my elegant speed masks and fade the background a little bit, for example. There's a lot of things I could do to this, but what I want to draw attention to is just that we have good skin tones. We have an overall smooth process going on. One of the biggest mistakes people make in using raw editors is they're always cranking up clarity. We're always pushing contrast, clarity, texture, dehaze to the right. In fact, I will often push those to the left quite a bit, because if you want a more natural, a more film-like, a more real look, you often don't want to be driving those up. Don't be afraid to push sliders to the left. So for the raw edit, I'm going over these different Silver 5 presets until I find the one that just kind of fits my visualization. Let's take Darkroom Crush here, and it kind of gives us that more creamy highlights, gives us the softer tones. But I could also go to something that was more dynamic range focused to balance it out, depending on what I was trying to get. The reason a raw edit's so powerful is because you can do this. If you're manually editing sliders in these raw files and not using presets, you might as well be going to Photoshop, because you're only getting the nuance of a raw edit, but you're taking all that time to do it manually. I'm not saying don't manually move those sliders. I'm saying whether you use my silver presets, whether you use someone else's, whether you make your own, you want to have your best tools in there and ready to go so that you can go over and get those visualizations. The power of the raw edit is you can do that, and then you can simply copy and paste it with all its masks, all its details to other images. So why bother editing in Photoshop if we can get all these great combinations in Lightroom? Well, let's look at it. Now I could reset this to 0, or I can go here and I can use Photoshop and Lightroom side by side. I'm going to restore color for Photoshop here. And what this does is it restores the color channels, but it leaves the tonal edits, the shadow, the highlight, all that kind of stuff that I adjusted alone. This is method number 2, and it's also very powerful. In Photoshop, I'm going to do a gradient map. Now, we could use the black and white filter. There's a lot of different ways that you can skin the black and white cat, so to speak, in Photoshop. But I'm going to go straight here to Blackroom, which is going to build a black and white conversion that I can then add things to and adjust the layers using all the actions in Blackroom. This is my black and white Photoshop system that I built. And I'll put links to all this stuff in the comments, in the description, by the way, but you can do all of this in your own way. The thing to note here is I'm using the gradient map method. I will link a video about how to do gradient map black and white in the description as well, so that we don't make this video too long. The bottom line is that with a gradient map, you can build all your layers and edits and intensity, and then the last layer you add is defining how you convert it to black and white, which can be changed dynamically. For example, you can map the path of where black converts to white, converts to gray, etc. You'll see that here in the Blackroom actions, where I can change the dynamic range of the entire conversion by clicking different variables of my map. I can have a low key, a high key, a more crushed look, a standard look, etc. All these are actually doing is changing the non-destructive parameters of my gradient map so that I can interpret the black and white my way using what? Well, all the layers below it. And then I can combine that by adding combinations of actions. So for example, let's run the silver screen action, which is going to then run a combination of a bunch of actions. You see it changing the layers, and you see now we kind of have this glowy atmospheric black and white. This is where, regardless of your approach in Photoshop or Affinity or whatever you use, the layered black and white will take you to a completely different level than just a raw black and white in Lightroom, Capture One, etc. Because when you start adding layers, you can mix in blurs, you can mix in blending modes, you can do things that we just can't do on a raw edit. Now let's just reset this and let's do it a little bit of a different way. Let's do the art portrait mix and see if I like that better. That's going to run, and I have this. And then I could say, no, let's do a yellow 12 filter on this, and that layer just gets added in. You, of course, also could manually build layers and saturations and all this stuff in Photoshop and then do a gradient map to convert to black and white at the end. After decades of experience, the gradient map method is, in my opinion, the best way to do fine art black and white edits using a layer-based approach where you can get grain, you can get atmosphere. There's just a lot more you can do. And that's why I built my black and white actions around that process. It doesn't mean it's the only way that you can do it. The key here and why this is different is this is a fine art layered black and white. The more you build up those layers, the more control you get. So when would I use the fine art edit? I would use that for the best photos that I'm going to do, the ones I'm going to print, the ones going to competition, the ones going on my profile. If I have 50 photos from a session, I can do this great raw edit with presets, with masks, with speed masking, copy and paste it to all the others and have a good edit, and then I can come in here and refine it with a fine art layered edit in Photoshop. I promise it's worth doing this part of it on your best work. A lot of us think, oh no, I don't want to bother going into Photoshop. Photoshop is very fast and easy if you have a system set up and you have the right tools in place to make it efficient. But there's a third option, and that's more of a tinted, toned black and white. Let's go back to Lightroom so we can kind of start over. Now you can do a tint in RAW. We're back in Lightroom again. We could do the same in Capture One. I could go down here and even my Silver 5 presets, I can do things like a copper mist, like a selenium bath, and get light tinting. But one thing you'll notice about tinting on the RAW file, well, there's nothing wrong with tinting a RAW file. It doesn't quite have that depth and nuance that a real selenium print, that a real cyanotype print would give you. To get that depth, you need to go back to a layered process. Now, we absolutely could have continued this edit from the layered blackroom edit we did, but I'm showing them all separately today so that you understand that they can all work together or they can all be different. In this case, I'm going to use the Platinum Emulsion version 4 from my Actions pack. Again, you can do this manually, but what this is doing is the same thing. It's doing these tints and adjustments and then allowing me to mod them, and it's building things like a cyanotype, like a platinum. I can do a wet plate look, and I can get these very nuanced tinted approaches that give me subtlety to the image. If you look at this, it doesn't have a strong tint, and this is a theme you're going to see across most tinted images. In fact, I was just working on another one from our group right here, and this also has kind of a platinum wet plate type of look. There's a tint there, but it's very subtle, and that's how the tinting from the darkroom was. So when I talk about that third option being a tinted, I'm talking about using something like a platinum print, and when you put these on, for example, a fiber paper and you print them, they really have this lush, rich depth. And the reason for that is because as you build these layers, you have all this control. I won't go into all the nerdiness that goes into making emulsion work, but the bottom line is here using also a gradient map. And those allow me to make these tints that are actually based, for example, on a real platinum print that are variable based on the tonal range of the image and that produce these very soft, delicate, rich results. Every one of these black and white methods works beautifully, and every one works by itself or together with other processes. The key is to not be intimidated by any of them. Never be afraid to go into Photoshop or your layer editor of choice. The reason things like Photoshop are so powerful and so used by professionals is because we can do things like actions that create these stacks of layers that would take you 30 minutes to build manually, and they do it in 2 seconds, and then you can simply adjust the layers accordingly. That's what's happening in my blackroom actions, in my signature emulsion actions, etc. The advantage of raw processing is, again, the ability to quickly edit and automate using presets, using masks, however you like to do it, and then copy those. So if I'm here with the darkroom crush, I can simply copy that over and paste it right to my entire group, and now all of them have that same black and white look. I don't recommend saying, oh, I'm going to be the best of the best and edit everything in Photoshop. What happens is you work way slower and you tend to get inconsistencies in the way you edit. I prefer to do kind of a grid-based edit with all the raw files, get everything looking consistent, and then use things like the fine art edit in Photoshop to make the best black and whites even better. All of these things let us have more control and more nuance in our edit. And if you create kind of this 1, 2, 3 system in your process where you know where your edits are going and what you want to do with them, you're not going to be intimidated by shadows. You're going to know how to try things. You're going to have a visualization here, and then you're going to be browsing over presets to see what makes it pop, what makes the skin tones, what puts the shadows where they want to be. This is stuff we talk a lot about in my Shadow Hackers live workshop. I'm always going to find my base raw process first. I'm going to get the session edited and find the look that goes with it. I'm going to bring the shadow out. I'm going to manage the fundamentals of dynamic range and things like that. Then I'll take the best of the best and I'll say, now let's do a fine art edit in Photoshop. I'll use Blackroom. Now let's do a platinum look on this and print it because it's going to give it that nuance and that richness that brings out the tonalities. Don't dismiss the tinting because it can actually be incredibly powerful. A raw, pure black and white, as it were, is really good, but those tints, if done well, correctly replicate the nuances that we got in the darkroom with different chemicals and types of paper, and those can really transform your image. Take all 3 of these steps and merge them together in your editing process to figure out what works for each image you're creating. Your black and white photos will thank you. They'll get so much better, and the quality will just keep going up so that when you put these on the walls, people are really saying, wow. Remember that your best black and whites are going to be the black and white photos that you planned for black and white, not that it was an afterthought. And then when you come in and you have these options in how you process and how you pull out, how you draw out the visualization that you had and refine it, that's when you're going to start getting results that are absolutely amazing. Hope you found this useful. We'll see you next time. Hit that like, subscribe, drop a comment. Let me know what your favorite black and white method is, and we'll see you next time.